I sketched out a business plan, literally in the steno notebook, and I created what I knew was going to work. I just knew it in my gut, in my heart. And I started contacting my favorite brands and designers.
Hi there. This is Her Intentional Reset, a podcast for women in midlife curious about whether the career they chose 20 years ago still fits. Hear from women who've made pivots big and small, discuss the practical realities, the trade-offs, and whether the change was worth it. I'm your host, Molly Whipperford, and I want to thank you for joining. If you're new here, welcome. I'm glad you found us. And in between episodes, come join us on Instagram and Facebook at herintentionalreset.co, that's .co, for guests behind the scenes and what's coming next. Now, let's get into today's conversation. Meet Jennifer Conrad. Jennifer is the founder and president of Twigs, a thoughtfully curated boutique with 2 locations in Madison and Brookfield, Wisconsin, plus an e-commerce site at shoptwigs.com. Before Twigs, Jennifer was a Fed funds and money market trader at Citigroup in New York City with an economics degree from Columbia University. In 2001, she made the move from the New York metro area back to the Midwest with her husband and 3 young children, a move that happened to fall on September 11. Twigs opened a few months later in January 2002. 24 years in, Jennifer is still running it day to day with her dog Otto in the office above the flagship store. I'm so glad to have Jennifer here. This is Her Intentional Reset. Welcome, Jennifer. I have been an admirer of yours, not only because of this beautiful business that you've created and really respecting you as a businesswoman, but also knowing a little bit more about your career pivot and seeing the successful business that you've grown over the years. Before we dig in, I want listeners to know that if you have ever considered a career pivot completely outside of your field, this story is for you. This story is also for if you are currently in the process of maybe a pivot yourself or maybe a transition, and you're wondering, can this endure time? This story is for you. And then lastly, if you are a fashion lover like me, and maybe you just have always been curious, like, what is that peek behind the curtain? This story is also for you. So after all of that, Jennifer, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Molly. I'm really happy to be here and be able to share my story and hope that maybe it might inspire someone to follow a passion they have and make a pivot in their life that serves them well. Because I think that's what it's really all about, is finding a way to lead our lives in the most authentic and happiest way that really gives us joy every day. And that's a hard thing for every one of us to achieve. There's no question about it.
Absolutely. How do you find that joy, but then also raise family and pay the bills too? Yes.
Yeah, true.
Jennifer, take us all the way back from the beginning, before Twigs, before you made the move to the Midwest. Just briefly paint us the picture of who you were and what you were doing in New York.
So I graduated from college and immediately went into a trading environment that was really challenging. It was with the world's largest bank at the time, on the world's largest trading floor at the time. And I was the greenest trader there. I was only 21 when I started. And I was there for a handful of years, and then circumstances changed and I ended up leaving that trading desk environment and becoming a full-time parent. And then we were living outside the city. I was no longer working. We were raising 3 little kids outside of New York City in the suburbs. And while it was wonderful and we were still making the most out of the New York lifestyle, it also wasn't necessarily serving our family well. It wasn't the kind of life that we wanted for our kids. And so we decided that we wanted to make a change. And after visiting Madison for my sister's wedding, we felt that that could be the place that would be a wonderful place to raise our family. So very abruptly, I'm a very fast decision maker, which is why I was a good trader. I said, you know what? Let's apply to this incredible school, Madison Country Day School, see if they have room for 3 kids. They did.
Okay.
We applied, the kids all got in, which would never, ever happen with a private school out east. And the reason I wanted the private school environment was because I had these twin boys. And I was so worried that they were going to get pigeonholed, where one of them was going to be the bookish one and the other was the athletic one. And I wanted them to be seen as individuals without those stereotypes attached to them. And I loved what that school offered. So we went home back to New Jersey and I said, we're putting this on the market. Let's see what happens. And so we overpriced it and it sold in one day. And I said, I guess we're moving back to Madison, which is where I had originally grown up, not in Madison, but in southern Wisconsin. And it was an interesting time. While the kids were little, I had transitioned from Wall Street to going to culinary school at this amazing school in Lower Manhattan. That is a really interesting piece of this puzzle. The school was called the French Culinary Institute. It has subsequently changed its name, but it was designed to be essentially similar to the Culinary Institute of America's 2-year program, but condensed into a 6-month program. And it was designed specifically for professionals who wanted to make a career change. So I was shoulder to shoulder with lawyers, Wall Street guys, hedge fund traders, mostly men actually, who were high-powered, high-achieving individuals, highly intellectual individuals who had achieved really good success in their careers, like me, and were like, I don't want to do this anymore. And for me, working in the trading environment, I had been very aware of the fact that the people who continue to do it for more than about 5 years or so, it took a toll on your body and your life and your relationships. And I think a lot of these guys found themselves in similar situations, that maybe they had chosen a career path that just wasn't serving them well. They were in practices that weren't bringing them happiness in their lives. And they had a passion for the culinary arts. And so it was a really interesting perspective for me.
Yeah.
We then moved to Wisconsin, and I still had that idea in my mind of let's do something very different. Obviously, I couldn't be a money trader in the Midwest, anywhere outside of New York. And I didn't really want to do anything with the culinary arts in a professional manner. I was doing it for my own personal enrichment. And I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. And the mind-blowing circumstance of when we moved was what was pivotal for me. We happened to move on 9/11, and my husband was back at home with the movers who showed up that morning from Wisconsin. And they had never been to New York City before, and they could see it, the top of the World Trade Center from the end of our driveway, which was like this very pastoral countrified setting with a horse farm, and it was beautiful countryside. Yeah. But the attachment to the city was always really important to me, because even though I was in this beautiful pastoral setting, I could see the trade center right there. And it was my previous life within arm's distance for me. And these guys showed up at 7 a.m. and like an hour later, it was just, a tower of smoke. And I was here with the kids. They were in school, and my phone stopped working. My friend's phone stopped working. My husband's phone stopped working. So I was detached from everybody who I cared about. I couldn't connect with them. I couldn't find out if they were okay. And I was obviously terribly distraught. Later, I found out that I lost a lot of friends that day. And during the day, I was kind of wandering around the city of Madison in an altered state of reality. And I was honestly looking for retail therapy, something to distract me from the terrible sense of dread that I was feeling. And at the time, there was the original Bop store, which has subsequently turned into this incredible shop Bop phenomenon that we are so fortunate to have coming from the city of Madison. There was that store, which was mostly just jeans and T-shirts and catered to the college crowd. And then there were a couple of other stores that no longer exist on State Street. And then there was like a really not great department store over at Hilldale. There wasn't the kind of shopping that I wanted to see in the city and that I expected to see, because Madison is such a well-traveled, well-educated society and community full of people who have lived around the world and around the country. And I was so surprised that there wasn't the kind of retail experience here that I would have expected to find. And so I realized I was seeing an opportunity, and I decided to go for it. And while I was drinking coffee in coffee shops and dealing with the reality of what was going on back home, I sketched out a business plan, literally in like a steno notebook. And I created what I knew was going to work. I just knew it in my gut, in my heart. And I started contacting my favorite brands and designers. And it was actually been a weird, strange way, perfect timing, because none of them knew what was going to happen. The whole city, or the whole country rather, was just in this frozen moment of altered reality. And they said, yeah, we don't necessarily care that you don't know what you're doing, that you have no experience in this, and that you're self-funded and you don't have a business plan, and that you don't have a bank supporting you. We'll sell to you. Sure. Why not?
Yeah.
So I was basically just this woman with a vision. And when my phone started working again, I would call my husband and I would say, I know what we're going to do. And he would say, what, can you wait until I get home? And I'd be like, no, it's okay. I'm going to go with the realtor and I'm going to go look at properties today. And then the next day I'd say, hey, I found a spot. It's going to be great. And and he would be like, can you just wait until I get out there? And I'm like, no, it'll be great.
Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And then within a couple of months, we had the doors open and it just took off. And then it just, grew from there.
Thank you for bringing us back to that moment of September 11th, 2001, because it's important that we remember those moments. I see this as a sign of your personality, of how in that moment of grief, how you're taking action and seeing that vision instead. You can't just sit in fear. Correct me if that's wrong.
No, I think that's true. I think it's true. It's interesting. I mean, in my earlier days, especially, I think I was a very risk tolerant person. And I would do my own risk analysis and determine whether or not something was a good idea. And if I determined that the risk was relatively minimal, I would accept the risk and move forward. And that was just how I was inherently built. And I was very unusual within my family that way. I think my whole family looked at me like, where did you come from? Because we don't do that here. I don't know what's wrong with you, which is why I think I was like 12 when I started planning my move to New York. I was like, nah, that doesn't work for me. I got to go someplace where people move faster and things happen faster. I got to go there. Yeah. So far, it's worked out okay.
Although, I would say so.
You throw a couple of major curveballs in, like a pandemic and the Great Recession, and it's been a wild ride. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself or over my skis here in our conversation, but I do think one of the ways I was able to survive both of those particular incidents is that I'm different than a lot of other business owners who do what I do within this industry, in the sense that I have never looked at this as a hobby or something that I was doing because I wanted to buy pretty things wholesale, which is, unfortunately, for better or worse, something that happens a lot in this industry. I've always looked at it as a business and built really on the same framework that I used to apply to what I did as a trader. It was maintaining margins and just very fundamental business practice. And then really, it was also that I was always big enough to survive, but small enough to pivot. If a storm came, you could turn the bow where you needed it to be to avert the worst of it, the center of the storm. You're still going to get hit by the outer rings of that hurricane for sure. But if you can avoid the center of the storm and move in a slightly different direction and change a few things about how you're doing things, how you're working, who you're working with, that kind of thing, you can survive. Ways to survive is, number one, always appreciating the work that the people do who are working with you, because you can't do anything on your own, like literally nothing. You can have a vision on your own. You can have a plan of where to go in the future, but the people who are working with you and are showing up every day are the people who I am most grateful for. And they are the ones who help execute those visions and build my business and honor the business and honor my incredibly loyal, wonderful customers. And that just means everything to me. I would do anything for any one of them.
Yeah.
It makes me really, really, really proud and happy that 25 years into this, I have roughly 30 employees and a good number of full-time employees women who are going through pregnancies and deliveries, and
Mm-hmm.
we're able to give them 401ks and health plans. And I mean, that makes me just so happy. And
Yes.
we're all so supportive of each other. And
Yeah.
that's just the icing on a really nice cupcake.
Yeah. Yes. And that's one of the things that I've noticed. Well, let me back up. When I first moved from Seattle to Madison, everything that you're saying with making that transition and being a little surprised with the lack of options in Madison, I felt that when I moved until I found Twigs. And that was 15 years ago. And then to see how, when I still go back, because I don't live in Madison anymore, but to still see some of the same employees that I've seen
Right.
since 15 years ago, that's incredible, especially in the fashion industry, the retail industry, where you just don't have that longevity. So that is something that I do want us to talk a little bit more in depth about. To your point, you've created a successful business, but you're also doing something to make sure that you have that employee retention and you're sharing the success of your business with your employees too, with being able to provide
Mm-hmm.
those 401ks. So what you have definitely is special. I do want to bring it back to when you first set out back in 2001, you had that vision. Were you ever interested in fashion in retail prior to this, or did you truly just see the need?
I was in only as a consumer, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I never took fashion as an industry seriously. I always thought that it was superfluous and just for non-serious people, which was very judgmental on my part, to be honest. And once I got into it, I realized that wasn't the case at all. It's as serious an industry as any other. But it's funny, I was just telling a friend this morning actually about how ironically, like when I was in high school, the money I had was from waitressing and babysitting. I wasn't that privileged girl who had a bank account to afford a great wardrobe. And I was not at all the popular girl in high school. I kind of hated high school. I was not a pom pom girl. I wasn't an athlete. I was the girl who barely showed up and was dating a 25-year-old guy out of school. And everybody was like, who is this girl? And so I was not popular, but yet when senior year, whatever that silly quiz came around that everybody was supposed to vote on, surprisingly, all of my peers voted me best dressed. And I was like, okay, this is
Oh,
weird to me because I was the girl who like was Molly Ringwald back in the 80s, like pulling together interesting outfits from vintage shops and inspired by really cool British punk bands. And that was me. So I guess you could say, yeah, I was definitely interested in fashion, but I never really thought about it. And now I derive so much happiness and joy out of it. I love seeing what people are doing. And I love being able to bring things that are from other parts of the world to Madison, because that is Madison. It's people from other parts of the world coming to live here for the university and for biotech. And it's just such a cool environment. And Brookfield is similar that way. You've got these dynamic, interesting people who travel all over the place. And everybody loves hearing the stories behind why it's at Twigs, because there is a story behind it. It's not just there for the sake of being there. I really do carefully curate things, and it brings me an enormous amount of joy to do it. I've had such a great year so far this year of travel, and everywhere I've gone, I've carefully picked up some ideas and some new designers. And one of them is John Hardy's daughter, Karina Hardy. I was in Bali in January and I met with her, and we're going to be carrying her things in the store soon. And her jewelry is beautiful. And she lives in this nirvana in Bali. And when I went to meet her, her dad and mom are on the other side of the room, just kind of chilling and hanging out. And I'm just like, this is amazing. You know, this is so cool. And to be able to bring that back with me is really just a lot of fun. And I try to do that wherever I go. Same way my designers will have a spring collection that's inspired by a trip they took someplace in the world. And then they'll choose colors and create patterns and things based on those experiences. And it's fun for me to be able to explain that and share it with customers in the store when they are looking at something and it's a beautiful pattern or beautiful fabric. And it's really wonderful to be able to say, oh, let me tell you about why Ulla Johnson made this. You know, she was on a trip in Spain and she saw this gorgeous whatever. And it's really fun. I'm glad I didn't open a Wild Birds Unlimited franchise because this is so much more fun.
I love the reference to John Hardy, and I can't wait to see what his daughter is creating. I didn't realize that she was following in her father's footsteps, and I haven't heard John Hardy in a while, and I'm like, oh, I love his watches, and I was obsessed with his watches.
I know.
So,
isn't it fun?
Yes, it is really fun. So back to your store initially, you had success and it was mainly focused on handbags and jewelry. And then eventually you moved to your flagship store in Madison. Is that when you started also expanding to include the clothing as well?
It is. Yeah. We had 2 storefronts on a shopping street in Madison called Monroe Street. And I love being part of that neighborhood. And I love being on a shopping street so much. But eventually it became clear that the only way we could truly grow was to change our business plan and accept the significant costs involved with being in what is often referred to as a lifestyle development, a lifestyle center or mall environment, because we needed the consistent foot traffic and we needed the freedom from parking issues and snow related issues. And so we needed to change the business plan in the sense that we needed to accept significantly different overhead costs, both in rent and in payroll costs, because we were now committed to a lease that requires us to be open 362 days a year from 10 a.m. until at certain times of the year, 9 p.m. And so that requires a very different type of overhead expense. So it meant that the numbers were going to have to change. Again, as a business owner, you've got to do your own risk assessment. Yep. And I would highly recommend that if that isn't something you feel comfortable doing, you seek a professional to help you figure out, because that's very important. You can't just take a risk like that without really having a good understanding of how much revenue you're going to need to bring in to be able to offset those costs. And there have been times, actually quite frequently, I will work with some of my vendors to talk to them about my overhead costs and why I am asking for a discount, which is not something that an independent retailer, a specialty store with only 2 storefronts typically is able to achieve. But because of our volume with some of our most important vendors, I'm able to negotiate that, which is a huge deal. We're open all the time. And so I'm able to go to them and explain, listen, my overhead costs are this. In order to be able to work successfully together in this partnership, I'm going to need a little something from you to be able to make this work. Those are the important things that I think, depending on what your business is, if you're a small business owner, going and asking for things and trying to negotiate something that you might perceive as being not tenable, at least try to do it, because you might surprise yourself. It might take a little bit. It might take you a few years in business to prove yourself. But surprisingly, we've got a couple of really important big name vendors where we are in their top 10 independent stores in the country, which is really amazing. And so they're able to be really good partners with us and help us make sure that we're going to be able to continue that status with them. That's something that I think a lot of small business owners need to keep in mind, that it's okay to ask for support that way.
Right. And you still do it with the business lens. You're not asking for a discount just for the sake of the discount. You're saying, hey, look, this is my overhead. I'm not trying to screw you over, but I want to work with you, but this is the reality of my situation. So I think that's very helpful. At what point from the one store, what had to be true for you to then decide to open a second location, the Brookfield location? And for listeners, that location is west of Milwaukee and probably about an hour and a half away from Madison?
Yeah, just a little under that. This is another piece of advice I would love to offer everyone who is considering opening their own business, or maybe already has one and is considering opening an extension of that. If there's someone in your industry who has been doing something similar to yours a little bit longer, and they're willing to open a conversation with you, and they're not gatekeeping that kind of information and perspective, if you can open up that conversation, give it a try, because what we did was we went and talked to somebody else who had opened multiple stores that were similar to ours. And we said, how do you do it? When do you know it's right to open a second store? Because we just knew that if we could replicate what we had in Madison in another similar type of setting, that it would be worthwhile. But it was daunting. My kids were still pretty little. And I thought, I don't know how we're going to pull this off. Even only an hour and change away, like, how do you staff it and make sure everything is okay? I had just gotten to a point where I was able to step back from being on the floor all the time, which I'd still love to be. I really would, but I also know that there's just no way I can. And it was also really important too that I knew that the measure of success of the business was related to my inability to not be present. It's not a viable business if it requires me to be there all the time. Yes. And it's not replicatable if it requires my presence. I'd gotten to a point where we just had a really strong staff and I felt like we could replicate it and with some good planning and a little bit of luck, make it work. And we spent a lot of time looking at the numbers and again, doing that risk analysis and just said, okay, let's just do it. Let's just bite the bullet. And the other retailer who we consulted with said, yeah, you just got to jump in. That second store, that second location is a big deal, but you just got to do it. And then once you've done that, 3 and 4 are all going to seem so much more achievable. And I do think that they're right about that. So that's where I think if you can talk to somebody who's been down that road that you're looking to start trekking on, it's really, really helpful.
Yes. Is it kind of like having children? Going from 1 to 2 is really hard, but then 3 going from 2
Although
to 3.
I can't speak to that because I had 2 right off the bat. I had twins. I mean, I was just barely grasping the idea of being a parent. And then they told me I was having twins. And I was like, okay, wait, that's not fair. I don't know what's happening right now.
You mentioned before that small businesses, you have to be agile. You have to be able to pivot quickly based on circumstances outside of your control. I know that you mentioned during COVID, that was a time that Twigs had to pivot. Can you talk about how you did that?
Yeah, that was really tricky for everybody. It's interesting because I have a really close friend who owns a chain of retail stores that are huge stores, still privately owned. She has 42 of them, and they were labeled essential. She and I always like trade information. And so it was interesting to see how she was managing the process and then how we had to manage it because we were not essential. For us, the shop online and pick up outside the store was very important. It was critical too, because basically what I was looking at when I walked into the store after everything shut down, and I just looked, both stores had roughly $300,000 worth of inventory that the vast majority of which was all aging by the minute. So what I did was we had always had a website that had been actually really quite sophisticated. We had built one probably 15 years before the pandemic hit, actually. We were really early on in that game. But the thing was for us, what happened during the pandemic for a lot of independent business owners in the retail business was that Shopify made it really easy for people to build out a Shopify site and be able to sell online within a couple of weeks of creating a site. And so that was happening very rapidly within the industry. And search engines were able to work with those sites very easily. And so those websites were successfully selling. And that allowed all of those retailers to stay alive and keep their doors open, which was an amazing thing. For us, what was problematic was that our website was too sophisticated and a little too elegant for those search engines to properly interface with. And we were seeing a problem there. And so we immediately, within a week or so of the full shutdown, realized that we needed to actually take ourselves from like a graduate level to like a middle school level, because that's where Shopify was at the time. Yep. But it was what needed to happen to be able to keep the search engine optimization where we needed it to be. Okay. And so we did that, and it was weird. It felt really, really weird. And then we also, of course, were able to take advantage of the shop online and pick up outside the store. It was a crazy time.
It was
really, really, really crazy. And I hope that never happens again.
Yes, but you survived.
Yeah, that's a really good example of where you have to think on your feet. don't allow yourself to get caught up in any sort of doom spiral and just be like, okay, this is what we're going to do next.
Yeah. And you mentioned before, though, you're good at making those fast decisions.
Yeah. Thankfully, it's like a natural reaction for me.
So looking back now, though, you have been doing this for 24 years, doing this on your own terms. How do you feel now versus when you initially started out, not knowing where this was all going to turn out?
I feel so good about the fact that what I've created has provided just a lifestyle for the people who work with us and love it so much. The fact that we are able to give women a successful career path that makes them happy. We have 2 teams in the 2 stores that interface with each other. So really it's a collective full team who just all really enjoy what they do for a living. And that isn't always the case in retail. Sometimes there's a lot of infighting and a lot of competition that's unhealthy. And it's one of the reasons we've never worked on any sort of commission. We never have ever done that. What we do is we do goals that are collective goals for everyone to achieve together. And it's just like icing on the cake goals. And it's really nice to see people working together to try to make those things happen. It makes me happy to see people being happy to come to work. I see that as being a huge success. And it also makes me really happy if somebody is coming in from out of town and they've never been in our store before and they walk in and they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I've never been able to find all of these brands all in one store together before.
Right.
Like I live in Fairfield, Connecticut or Menlo Park or wherever. And they're like, and I can't find all this in one place. This is incredible. Can you please open a store in my hometown? You know, and I'm like, yeah, that's great. Tell me where and I'll start working on that. Or for the person like you, there are so many people who move to Madison from other parts of the world or the country, and they'll come in and they're like, oh my gosh, it's the real world. Wait, what happened?
Yes,
I didn't know you were here. This is amazing. And that's one of the biggest compliments somebody could ever pay me. I am just like so happy to hear that.
Oh, what you have created is such a beautiful place. So,
thank you.
As you were talking about leadership, you mentioned before you have approximate 30 employees. Let's talk about, we know who's in the front of the house or in the store, but help us understand behind the scenes what your role is and who else is on your team to help you scale everything that you have today.
So I'm president CEO. I have 4 management team members, 2 in each store, who just keep things humming, and they're fantastic. And they both oversee a really great team of associates. Sometimes college students, sometimes women in their 50s and 60s who are like, hey, I want this discount and I love these clothes and this is fantastic. And they're having fun hanging out with the younger girls. It's just like this really great mix. Then I've got this incredible woman who works with me, who is my director of stores, but she does so much more than that. She's my fellow buyer. When this company continues to grow, she's going to be my COO for sure, because she's a chief of staff. She's everything. And she is poised to grow this company with me and really make some amazing things happen in the next 5 years. And then she and I together oversee 2 young women in their 20s who do an incredible job of all of our creative content. These 2 creative team members do everything from graphic design to our own in-house photography, which is incredible. So we have a studio in our office in Madison, and every single thing that we get in gets photographed and then edited offsite and then tweaked and loaded up on the website with a good solid description. Then the 4 of us work on digital marketing together, which is this crazy animal that we're all still trying to figure out. The 2 young women on our team have gone to take a certificate course in digital marketing. And it's nice because we can support that and we can support continuing education that both benefits them as individuals, but also the company as well.
Let's talk about, what is your leadership style, Jennifer?
It's interesting. My leadership style has always been very hands-off. I like to hire good people who are very competent and then stand back and let them do what needs to be done, oversee from a distance. And if they need something from me, they come to me and we work through problems together. And it works really well.
Mhm.
I've discovered that people thrive when they have that sort of light-handed leadership and they feel that they've got the support they need and they've got that vote of confidence that they are able to do their job and do it well. And I think that the team aspect of a workforce is so important. When everybody understands what part of the puzzle they fit into and what role they play, and that's all really clear,
Yeah.
and you're transparent with them about where things are at and where things are going, everybody feels just really good about where they are within the company and what their role is. And it's just a really positive environment. I'm really pleased to be able to say that and know that it's something that we've worked hard to cultivate and to protect. And knowing what it's like working in other companies, that's a hard thing to achieve and maintain. And I really am so proud of everybody on my team for doing that, for going the extra mile to support each other. And I think that kind of leadership comes from the top.
This episode is brought to you by Her Intentional Resets Pay It Forward sponsorship, supporting independent women-owned businesses. One day, I woke up and discovered my love of plants, and they've become a part of my love language. I was so excited to hear about Roots and Bloom, a mobile plant shop now available in the Twin Cities, founded by Sierra Curtis. Roots and Bloom turns plants into an entire self-care experience, from painting and planting to plant bingo and so much more. Follow Roots and Bloom Studio on Instagram. That's Roots and Bloom _studio on Instagram. It's also going to be linked in our show notes to see where the mobile plant shop is popping up near you. And mention Her Intentional Reset for 20% off any plant purchase, because taking care of yourself is always worth it. This is a good time to ask, what are your future goals for Twigs?
We are poised right now to open 2 additional stores in the next 3 to 4 years. I would like to say even a more aggressive timeline with that. I would like to probably make that closer to 24 months. I have a couple of locations in mind, and I just think that what we are doing is a unique offering to anyone who is considering creating something. The uniqueness of what it is that you want to create and offer is really important. It feels like it's harder and harder to achieve that every day or every year because there's just so much going on, and people are so creative and so good at meeting the customer's needs. For us, what's unique about Twigs is that we have this incredible designer matrix, and we combine that with really good customer service. And we do things like free gift wrapping and free shipping for orders over $200. And we offer in store, and for anybody calling in online as well, some really good personal styling advice. And I think there is a need for that in so many communities around the country. I would love to open at least 2 more stores that I would independently own that could potentially be in some way franchised, because I think about stores like Intermix that doesn't exist anymore, really. And a couple of other stores similar to us where it's a multi-brand store with a really intentional curation and stuff. There aren't that many of us because it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would love to replicate it. And I've got at least another 10 years left in me. So that's what I'm going to do.
I can't wait to continue to follow to see where these other stores go. And the idea of going even bigger beyond opening up a couple more stores to a franchise, that is all very exciting things to hear. Jennifer, I love how you are saying that you are curating pieces for the store, sometimes around the world, and there's always a story behind it. So help us understand the difference between curating and buying, and where does the art come in for you?
It begins with finding artists who I think have something special to offer. And then once you've looked at their collection for a season, choosing what you think is the best of that. So you're looking at a subset of it and you're choosing something that you think is not only their best effort, but also something that is going to speak to your customer the best.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm thinking of like Ulla Johnson, she's one of my favorite designers. She is a true artist and she's won the CFDA award for multiple categories that she creates, both her ready to wear and her footwear. And she'll do a pattern and she'll do it in like 3 different colorways. And I love being motivated or inspired by the pattern and then choosing the colorway that I think is going to be the best for maybe the climate in Wisconsin. We're not Palm Beach, we're going to be looking for something a little darker perhaps, or something a little more subtle perhaps. And then that same designer will do a dress and a top and a skirt and maybe a pant as well. And so then it's fun to be able to think, how does my customer wear something like this? So if you're living a life in Wisconsin, you maybe don't need the fancy dress. Maybe what you want is the top and the skirt, or probably more likely the top and the pant. And then you can pair that top back to a pair of jeans. And then maybe if you want the full look, you get both pieces. And then you've got the ability to just toss on a sweater with those pants. You're buying it really for not just the people who are coming into your store, but also just the people who are living around you and are living a very specific type of lifestyle based on our climate, our culture. We live a pretty casual, chic lifestyle here. There isn't a single restaurant that you can't go to in a pair of jeans if you want.
Right.
And even if you're going to a country club or something, you can still wear jeans, but they're not going to be ripped and they're not going to have a raw edge. So you take that into consideration. And it's just a lot of fun. I mean, it's a lot of work and it's really time consuming. You also have to take into consideration your budget and also the budget of the people whom you're selling to. It's a lot of number crunching. It's a lot of thoughtful consideration as to what works well and what is worth the time and attention of your customer and what is worth them considering making an investment and adding to their wardrobe, because everything is an investment, even like a simple button down. If it's Italian cotton or flannel and it's being sewn in LA, it is a lot more expensive than the Chinese made version that you're going to find at H&M or at Target or whatever. So you've got to choose wisely and choose something that somebody is going to be able to get a lot of wear out of, and they're going to be able to understand why it costs what it does and what makes it special.
Yes. I've heard you talk about that your Twigs customers, you curate to 3 generations of women. Can you describe what those styles are?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so much fun watching that happen. You'll see like a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter coming in. And the daughter might be high school age and she's going to go straight to the Aviator Nation sweatsuits. She's going to try to convince her mom or her grandma to get one of those for her. And the mom is maybe she's looking for jeans too. And she's maybe looking at A Goldie, which is like the sister brand to Citizens of Humanity. And mom might be looking at the Citizens jeans or maybe a really great pair of Neely jeans, Neely Lotan. And so the mom will have the slightly more sophisticated look in mind and want something a little bit more special. And the grandmother, she's looking at jewelry and sweaters and a great handbag, and it's all happening together and at the same time. And it's so much fun to watch each find their own special things, but then also ask each other for advice and share dressing rooms. And it's really, really fun. It's one of those moments that I think everybody who works at Twigs really enjoys. And it's fun to find those pieces. That's another thing that we take into consideration when we're doing the buying. Those things that are multi-generational really speak to us. And that's important to us because I don't ever want anybody to come in and feel like, oh, this is too young for me. That's not a feeling I want anybody to have.
Yes. So paint us a picture of what Fashion Week or a buying trip actually looks like.
It's actually kind of grueling with a lot of fun thrown in. So people always ask, so how was it? And I'm like, we worked hard and played hard, essentially, which is so New York, We do all of our buying in New York, mostly just because all of our brands, they show at Fashion Week in New York for the most part, and they all have showrooms in New York. A few weeks later, they'll be showing in LA, and in February, that sounds really appealing. I would go there, but by then you have fewer choices and not every brand is there. So that's why I just continue to always do it all in New York. And also because I still have my friends there and I get to keep in touch with everybody, which is really great. But it starts with meetings going from showroom to showroom as early as 7 o'clock in the morning and getting back to Brooklyn, where I always stay, as late as 7 o'clock at night.
Okay.
And then it's like a game of Jenga. And I have a very puzzle oriented brain. So it works really well for me. And thankfully, Leah does too. So we're just like always piecing things together because the amount of information that you are soaking up and taking in is astronomical. We don't write orders when we're there. We come back and then we start piecing it all together. And we're looking at like 5 or 6 different denim brands. And you got to make sure that you get everything, but not too much. You can't have too much overlap because that would be a bad financial decision. So you need to make sure everything melds together well. From a purely logistical standpoint, it's also really helpful that I used to live in New York and I really understand the city well because I plan and choreograph where we're going from one appointment to the next, knowing how long that appointment is going to take. And then how long it's going to take to walk to the next place, and then how long that one's going to take. But then you also have to make sure that those people have those times open in their calendar. That in and of itself is like a whole job. I've often thought I could offer that service to another company and charge for it if I had the time, but I don't. But it's a lot. And then, but it's fun too, because then we get a chance to go to a couple of shows. We usually always make it to the L'Agence show and to Ulla Johnson's show and a couple of others. It used to actually be even more fun when Bryant Park was home to all of the runway shows, and that was really cool. The garment district is still alive, but it's been hit hard, and the designers are now like all over the city.
Thanks for painting us that picture. And for those that are listening, if you're curious about some more behind the scenes of Jen's buying trips, you guys do post those sometimes on your Instagram account. And those are fun to see. Is there a trend that surprised you that took off that you were like, interesting?
There's a few, actually. It's weird how the 80s are back. I cannot get used to the socks with loafers look or the socks halfway up the calf with sneakers look. And I don't even honestly think it looks good on young girls either. I know they're all doing it, but if we decided to do that, you guys would laugh at us.
It chops your life.
Yeah, it'll come and go, thankfully, and then it'll be over. I am shocked that parachute pants are back, but I'm also here for it. In fact, I'm wearing a pair right now. It's kind of fun. It's kind of wild. I'm like, oh God, this is happening. We're in the 80s.
All right, Jen, let's transition to some of the practical considerations, starting with some financial considerations. As a business owner, what is your philosophy on paying yourself? And if it was maybe different at the beginning versus how it is now?
I was in a somewhat unique position where I was able to not pay myself and take a salary for the first few years. And so everything was just put back into the business to keep it healthy and let it grow. I do think that if I were advising someone who was starting a company, that it probably is important to factor in a salary for oneself as the founder and owner. Because realistically, you need to pay your bills. You need to be able to pay for health insurance for yourself. You need to live a life that's reasonable. And the thing is, too, let's say your goal was to sell your business. Anybody interested in buying your business is going to need to know what it would cost to take somebody in, to hire somebody to do your job. And that is a big consideration. If you have to pay somebody $100,000, let's say, to do your job, that's going to affect the value of the company. So yeah, you got to think about that too. I think it is important to not take a crazy salary, be measured, be conservative, but take it into consideration, factor it into the costs.
Excellent point. You mentioned that part of the reason why you've had long employee retention is because of the team that you've built, and you alluded to some wonderful benefits for your employees. Can you talk about what you've been able to offer?
Yeah, it started with a 401k savings plan where we matched. That was really a big step for us that we were really proud of and happy to be able to do. And then just this year, we were able to create our own health plan, healthcare coverage. Prior to that, we were giving our employees stipends towards their own healthcare plans through the marketplace, which was another way for us to help support and offset those costs because healthcare is so expensive. It's a way that we can respect the work that they do, show them how much they matter to us, but also remain competitive. I want to make sure that people understand that I want them to want to work for us more than a national chain store. And personally, it's a really great feeling as an owner to be able to change things for the individual at hand, especially because we're a woman-owned and operated company. Women have a lot of difficulties that come up in their lives, whether it be children who catch a virus and need to get picked up from school. And my gosh, I have 3 kids who are now grown adults, but I went through that. And it's really important that we are flexible and we respect the important nature of being a mother. You need to be there for your child when all of a sudden they need you. And we take that really seriously. So we support our staff in that way.
Yes. And your employees pay it back to you with their loyalty. So that's great to hear. I do want to ask if there's a woman listening right now who's considering a real industry jump, what would you tell her about making a career change in an unrelated field?
I think if your motivation is to leave the job and the industry that you're in, take the time that you need to soul search and find something that speaks to you. And that may not be an easy process. You may need to engage a therapist, or take a lot of girlfriends out for coffee and have them help you drill down to what it is that makes you happy and what could potentially lead to a viable career. It's important that if you're going to make that jump, you do it into something that nourishes a part of your soul. And there is something out there for every one of us, I think. And then there's going to be that leap of faith. And the risk assessment is always going to be there too. You got to figure out, am I going to make the same amount of money? If not, how is that going to affect the rest of my life, the rest of my family, and that sort of thing? If I'm sacrificing a lot, how am I going to make that up? Or is it okay that I'm not making as much because I might be so much happier? There's so much to take into consideration in that area. I have a daughter who's going through that and has been for a couple of years. And it's kind of like the organic food situation. Okay, I'm going to spend some extra money on some organic vegetables and fruit today, but I'm not going to spend as much on medical bills down the road, probably. And, and the same is true for if you're working in an environment that is best case scenario, just not serving your needs and not bringing you joy. Worst case scenario, maybe toxic and really terrible. Either way, you should probably be thinking about what can I do with the rest of my career that's going to make me happier and that is going to be a better fit for me.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Listen to your good friends who know you well, because I think they can be really good sounding boards too. Women are intuitive and they're supportive, and hopefully we all have some of those women in our lives. And having their perspective is really good because sometimes we get in our heads too much and we need somebody to just take us by the ears and be like, you know what, you're going to be okay. Just make a break from it.
Yes, that is a conversation that we all need to do, that self-check-in. So thank you for sharing that perspective and that advice. All right, our rapid round, just some fun questions, real life, because we are not all just career women. First question, family and entertainment. Do you have a favorite go-to family meal or recipe?
I do. It was what I made my kids almost every year for their birthdays, because every time I asked them, what do you want? They said this. And I did a lot of other nights as well. It's chicken piccata. Just like that classic pounded thin chicken breast with white wine and lemon and capers and butter. Don't forget the butter. I'll share the recipe with you. It's fantastic. With any seasonal vegetable, it's my favorite.
Amazing. I can't wait to try it. And because we've been talking about fashion, I have to ask you, who is your favorite designer to wear?
I have to say, I think it's Neely Lotan. And I think it's because she speaks to my sensibility so well. I love the simplicity of like a really great button-down shirt or cashmere sweater, but just beautifully done, really gorgeous details. And then just an amazing pair of jeans or a leather pant or something along those lines. She never gets that wrong. And throw in one of her amazing belts, and it's just like pure perfection.
What made me love her are her barrel pants, because her barrel pants feel so light.
They're incredible.
Yes, yes.
That fabric, it's insane. And I know other designers have tried to mimic it and it's never going to happen. I don't know what kind of magic that is, but I personally think that she was the one who created the barrel look with the Sean. And it's just amazing that she created like a whole genre of pants and jeans with them. And I probably have like 7 or 8 pairs at least.
Okay, that's a perfect segue. What is the best perk about your job?
Just loving what I do. There isn't a day that I don't go into the office and love saying hi to the people who are there almost always ahead of me. And then I go to New York and I love being back in New York because it's my happy place and my best friend lives there. It's really hard for me to pick one thing. I guess I would just have to say the people, which is really saying something because I love the freaking clothes so much and the accessories, of course, too. But the people, even more, it's really great. And I have the intense benefit of being able to just not work with people I don't want to. If I have a great brand, but I don't like the people, I'm just like, there's a lot of other great brands out there. But it's really nice that I have that flexibility because life's too short. I don't want to work with shitty people.
Yes, but that's also what's great about being in your role, being the CEO and founder, that you get to draw those boundaries. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. One networking tip.
One networking tip is think outside the box a little bit. For instance, I'm going to New York next week to go take a couple of meetings with some of my designers for their holiday collections. And I had an opportunity to attend a small symposium on AI issues, AI as it pertains to the fashion industry. And this isn't necessarily something that you would normally think about, but I am interested in the subject of AI in the fashion industry, obviously. But I also see this as a huge opportunity to be in a very small setting with a lot of very interesting people, business experts in the field, a lot of business leaders. And it's a small setting. So we're going to have lots of opportunity for conversation. So think outside the box and look for other types of social settings where people in adjacent industries or, you know, your industry, but in a unique aspect or a unique portion of the industry are getting together and try to take advantage of that. And through those interpersonal conversations and connections, strike up conversations. Don't be afraid to. When you make an impression on somebody through an interesting conversation, it can lead to all kinds of things.
I love it. Great perspective. Yeah. Final question. What is one non-negotiable for your well-being?
I learned it late in life, really late. I am 57 and only in the last few years did I really figure out that I need to take care of myself before I can properly be there for everybody else. I've heard a couple people make associations with that whole airplane air mask thing. You got to put the mask on yourself first before you can take care of the person next to you. It's true. If you're not doing something to restore your own energy and replenish your own soul, there's only so much that you're going to really be able to do for everybody else. And I have really recognized now at this point in my career that it's important for me to be there for everybody else, not just my family. My kids are all grown up and they're really good on their own, but they still need me in their lives in a different way. And the people who work with me, they need me to be there and they need the company to be strong and healthy. And all of that is going to be more successful and more abundant if I am coming from a place of being in a strong space, in a healthy space. So I've learned to do new things. Meditation is important to me, and restorative yoga and getting good sleep and just eating really well. Those things are more important to me than they've ever been before. They've always played a role in my life, but I've prioritized them in a different way now.
That is a good reminder for all of us to hear.
Yeah.
So Jennifer, thank you so much for all your time, for all your candor. Like I said from the very beginning, I have admired you for a really long time. I feel like to me, you are my Molly Ringwald.
Yay!
Yes. And it's just so great to hear you had that vision 24 years ago and to see how you have built this up from that initial store to 2 stores and to hear where you're headed next. It's very inspiring for all of us to hear. If
Thank
listeners
you.
want to reach out or just want to follow along with what Twigs is doing, where can they find you?
Send an email to info@shoptwigs.com, or you can also go on our social, which is @shoptwigs on Instagram, and you can also DM me there. I'm happy to connect with anybody who is interested in having a further conversation. No gatekeeping here. I love working and supporting other women and doing whatever I can to help lift somebody else up. It's important that we all do that for each other.
Thank you so much, Jen. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. And to our listeners, if this episode resonated with you, subscribe on your preferred streaming platform so you never miss another conversation, and share this with one woman who needs to hear it. Every subscribe and every share helps the algorithm get the show in front of more women asking the same questions that we are. That's how we grow this community together. And remember to explore on your own terms, because nothing changes if nothing changes. And to our loyal listeners, these are my after show reflections. Meeting Jennifer was incredible. There's something really special about meeting someone you've admired from afar and then having them somehow exceed your expectations once you're actually sitting across from them in conversation. Jennifer was every bit as cool, chic, and collected as I'd imagined. But what I didn't fully see until I met her was how kind she is, how thoughtful, and how she carries that straightforward, no-nonsense practicality alongside all of it. Two things really struck with me from our conversation. The first is how Jen has built her business so that it actually fuels her creativity and how it brings her joy instead of draining it. Isn't that search that many of us are on? And I love how she frames what she does. She calls it curating instead of buying, and I completely agree. I also think what she has done is curate the lifestyle that she wants, sourcing together the right work and opportunities with the right people, the right ideas, in a way that's distinctly hers, curated. The more that I sat with that word after we hung up, the more I agreed with it. It's a much more honest description of how a lot of meaningful work actually gets made. The second thing that I'm taking away ties to something Jennifer said toward the end of our conversation. When you're thinking about a pivot, the work doesn't have to be done in one big dramatic gesture. You just look, pay attention, do the work, whether it's through meditation or therapy or through honest conversations with the women in your life or through noticing what's already showing up in front of you. And the reason that resonated is because I am starting to do the work like she recommended. And my work is in the form of the book called The Artist's Way. If you haven't come across it, The Artist's Way is a 12-week book and program by Julia Cameron, originally published in the early 90s to help Black artists reconnect with their creativity. The two core principles or practices are pretty straightforward. First is the morning pages. It's 3 pages of longhand stream of consciousness writing every morning. And then it's a weekly solo artist date where you take yourself out to do something that fills you back up. I'm bringing this up because a couple different people in my life have recommended this to me all around the same time. And what they told me is that the book isn't really about becoming an artist at all. It's about quieting the noise long enough to actually hear what your own heart has been trying to tell you, which, as it turns out, is exactly what you need when you're trying to figure out a career move. As I work through The Artist's Way, what I'm really curious to see with some additional research is where fashion falls in line with my next potential career pivot. I love this industry. And when Jen talked about reaching out to your girlfriends to get their perspective, they knew about my upcoming interview with Jennifer and how excited I was for this. And they are like, oh my goodness, this is totally you all the way. Even my mother-in-law, she knows Twigs and she knows how much I love it. And she is like, this is totally you. You're also going to hear me talk to some other people in this industry as well. So I can't wait for you to hear those conversations. And if there's somewhere in your own version of this in-between place, I just want you to know there's no rush and there's no right way through it. We're figuring this out together. If today's episode got you thinking, I'd love to keep that conversation going. Sign up for my email list at herintentionalreset.com. You'll get the latest episodes as they drop, additional resources from our guests, and coming soon, access to our community forum where women are keeping this conversation going in between episodes. Sign up at herintentionalreset.com. I'll see you there, and I'll see you next episode. Bye now.